Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to episode number 38 of the Smart Nutrition Made Simple show. I'm your host, Ben Brown, co-founder and CEO of bslnutrition.com. Today on the show, I'm happy to welcome Krista Scott-Dixon, PhD. She is the Director of Curriculum at Precision Nutrition, which is one of the top online nutrition coaching and coach certification programs in the world. She's the creator of the PN coaching program and its offshoot ProCoach and PN Level 2 Masterclass certification, as well as the co-author of PN Level 1 certification textbook Essentials of Sport and Exercise Nutrition. Previously, she was a researcher and teaching faculty member at York University in Toronto, and she's published widely in both academic and popular presses, as well as being a sought-after speaker on the topic of nutrition and behavior change. And her latest book is a workbook full of curse words called Why Me Want to Eat, Fixing Your Food, excuse my language, fucked-upitude. She also created one of the first websites for women's weight training back in the mid-1990s called stumptuous.com. This is a conversation chock full of clinical pearls, as I like to call them, as we talk about the coaching process, as we talk about establishing more awareness with those looking to create change in their life, the power of awareness, the power of action, even if it's just 5 minutes, and how the majority of what people need as it pertains to health and weight loss and loving their bodies more revolves not so much around what we do or don't put into our mouths, but rather the way that we experience our food, the way that we work within our community, the way that we, the social support that we surround ourselves with, the way that we think about ourselves. And so you're going to want to make sure to listen to this all the way through. And so I'll waste no further time. We will jump right in. Krista Scott-Dixon, hello. Welcome to the Smart Nutrition Made Simple podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. It's really an honor to have you on. With all your experience coaching clients over the number of years, the first thing I want to jump into with you, Krista, is I'd love to find out more about kind of just in a nutshell what you've been doing with precision nutrition all these years and all of the kind of data that you guys have been able to collect.
Well, okay. So for folks who maybe don't know what we do, we're basically, I think, the world's largest online nutrition coaching company. So just to set the stage. And so we've had about 50,000 coaching clients go through our program, which is a year-long program. And then we also certify coaches. And so we've had about 40,000 coaches to date go through our certification program, whether that's level 1 or level 2, and everything is online. So my job is to write the curriculum that coaches would see or that clients would see, and to kind of put it out there to, folks who would either want to transform their bodies or who would be looking to help other people transform their bodies. So that's more or less the short version of what I do. And then I also, I also go out and do talks and workshops and kind of spread the gospel of precision nutrition to people. And that's a role that's actually really evolved over the years, because when I first started at Precision Nutrition, I think I was employee number 8. If I can remember correctly. And we had a website, and we had, I think we had a binder at that time, but it was like pretty, not low budget. I mean, it was well done, but like it certainly did not have the reach and the scope and the huge team of people that we have now. So yeah, that's what I do, more or less.
So what's some of the data that you guys are consistently collecting that you can use as a guide, as a framework in order to continually grow in the industry?
That's a great question. We have unbelievable amounts of more data than we can use. Like, we really want to hire, an entire team of machine learning experts to really plumb the depths of it. But in general, what we've seen is that behavior change strategies and approaches work, that people truly benefit from them. And there are a few factors that contribute to people's success, whether that's in body change or self-education. And I think the most useful thing for listeners is to know you don't have to be talented. You don't have to be gifted. You don't have to be special. You don't have to be smarter. You don't have to know more. You just have to show up every day and do the thing. That is all. Like, that is the most significant predictor of success in any program that we have, is just that you show up every day and you do the thing we ask you to do. That's it. And it's interesting because many of our finalists, people who win our little body transformation competition, they're just regular people. They don't know about nutrition, or they're willing to sort of set whatever they know aside and just follow the instructions. But they just took such a simple approach. They're just like, I'm going to show up and do what you guys tell me to do. I'm going to do that tomorrow. And this blows my mind, because I think that so many of us in the industry are trying to learn more and do more and be more and push it and look for the magic plan or whatever. But all you have to do is show up and follow instructions. That's it. That's what the data say.
Well, I mean, to your credit, though, it's the level of instruction that is, the most important aspect. I mean, next to them showing up is what is the instructions that you guys are giving them that's leading them down the yellow brick road, so to speak. So how has that level of instruction evolved over the years that you've been involved with the program? Because you mentioned behavior change. Has it always been behavior change, or was there a point when it was like, eat this, not that, and you realized? And at what point did you realize that, no, I think we need to focus more on those behaviors? Maybe you could speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I'm really glad you asked that, because that's exactly what happened. Like, when I first started, we saw ourselves as being in the business of providing sports nutrition information for people, I think, who were pretty much interested in sports nutrition. So they were people who were looking for that information, who truly wanted to know about it, who would be genuinely interested in knowing the mechanics of it and how many grams of protein they should be eating and all that kind of stuff. And we definitely treat it very much as like a top-down kind of thing, right? We're going to tell you some stuff and you follow what we tell you to do. Yeah. And then you'll get ripped and swole. And they did, right? But we started to kind of bump up against things like, for example, the first habit of our program used to be take fish oil. Right, and people were like, but why do I take fish oil? What kind of fish oil do I take? My pharmacist says it's too much. Like, just stuff, all this stuff. And we were like, well, what's with these dumbasses? How come they don't know that we're the smartest and we've read the research that they should do it? Right? And so it started to kind of dawn on us, like, okay, wait, maybe we're the dumbasses, right? Maybe we should be going about this another way. So when I rewrote the program, I took a much more behavioral kind of counseling psychology approach, really thinking about how do you get people to do stuff and how do you guide them through the process of change. So the way we do things now in 2018 is hugely different from how we did them in 2007, 2007, I think, is when I showed up. Like, the mindset is completely different. And it's also grown with us. And so if you think about it, we are 10 or 11 years older too. So we have aged, we have had families, we've had ups and downs and injuries and illnesses and moving and whatever, all the things that happen to our clients. And so now we also have a much greater appreciation of, like, this is reality. This is what happens. And it's super easy to have a really strict meal plan when you're a 25-year-old guy and you got nothing else to do besides go to the gym and maybe have a part-time job or whatever, right? Exactly. All of a sudden, for example, John Berardi has 4 kids and he's like, oh yeah, things are different. I'm not 22 anymore and working as a personal trainer. So it's matured as we have matured. And as we have had different perspectives brought to us. But yeah, it didn't start out that way. And I mean, I like the word mature because I think it reflects a much more sophisticated understanding of what we're actually doing here. And I think it's a much more compassionate approach. So it's not just realistic. It's not just oriented, psychologically differently, but it's much more compassionate. It's much more caring. It's much more about how can we just be kind to people, because so many people are dealing with so much stuff. And if your body's out of order, it probably means your life is out of order. So how do we start with that piece instead?
Yeah. So coming from academia, It's obviously logical for you guys to, I think that's what we all want to do as coaches, especially when we're getting started and we have all this information. It's like, I just want people to understand what I understand. And if I can give them the information, then they can just go and implement it. And it's that simple. And then, of course, through time and understanding and empathy and experiences, we start to change. And obviously our guidelines start to change. Did you have a background in psychology to be able to understand the behaviors that you needed to start to implement?
No. And it's funny you asked that because I've actually just gone back to grad school. So, and it's funny because people are like, you already have a PhD. Why are you going back to grad school? Are you some kind of like sicko? But it's,
Yeah,
I mean, like, why are you doing this to yourself? Right. So I've actually just gone back for my master's in counseling psychology because I didn't have that background. It had to be completely self-taught. What I did have was a background in teaching. I was a university teacher for 10 years. I had a background in research. And so I was able to go into a field of study and say, okay, like, what is it I need to know about this? And then I started doing counseling workshops. I think the first thing that really sparked it for me was at the university I was at the time, they had a workshop on emotion-focused training for eating disorders. I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. And so I showed up and it was a 2-day, pretty intensive, like full day, 2 full days of counseling. And it was just me and a bunch of therapists, right? So everyone's going around the room. What do you do? What do you do? Oh, I've been in practice for 20 years. And I'm like, yeah, I teach nutrition. So it was kind of a weird moment, but nevertheless, it hooked me on the first day. I was like, holy crap, I see the potential of this to, intervene in ways that we've been previously unable to. But yeah, my academic background, nothing to do with counseling psychology, at least in the early days. I started it in fine arts, for God's sake. I thought I wanted to be an artist in 91. So that didn't pan out. Thank God.
I think you found your niche for sure.
So for now.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. So 50,000 clients later. So what are some of the big habits, the big needle movers that, people need to implement that are kind of the non-negotiables that you guys plug in with Precision Nutrition?
I would say that there are 3. So the first one, and they're the first 3 habits in most of the programs. Okay. And actually there's 2 variations of the same one. One is take a 5-minute action. It doesn't matter what the 5-minute action is. The idea is that you do something, because for so many of us, we get immobilized, right? We get spun up in analysis paralysis. We get spun up in choices. Which way do I go? What do I do? We get spun up in our feelings, our stories, our scripts, and we just get stuck. But if we could just take an action, we would be mobilized. We would start the ball rolling. And so, of course, 5 minutes is like, most people look at that and go, okay, I can do 5 minutes, whatever that is. And so you start to vote in favor of change. Even if it's 30 seconds, you take a vitamin, awesome. You've just voted in favor of a different future. And you've taken action, which is energizing. So that's piece number 1. And the variation on that is make time. So the idea is to start to take an active sense of how your time is being spent. Start to take charge of your life in a very tiny way, rather than sort of being in the river and just being passive about it. The second habit for most people is eat slowly. Now, regardless of whether you want to lose weight, gain muscle, whatever, it's important to check into what is happening. Eat slowly without distractions. This is a proxy for mindfulness. This is just saying, show up, pay attention, pause for a minute before you do anything. Just take a moment to think about what's happening here. And then the third one is, for most people, if they want to lose weight, eat to 80% full. Again, it doesn't really matter what the goal is. The idea is learn your physical cues. Learn when you're physically hungry. Learn when you're physically full. Now, if you're a muscle gain person and you want to blow past that, great. But you can't be eating for mass gain forever, right? You can't infinitely be taking in 5,000 calories a day. At some point, you got to cut that off. So everyone needs to learn their physiological hunger and fullness cues. And it goes beyond hunger and fullness into like learn your pain cues, learn your energy cues, learn your mood cues. Just check in with yourself physiologically to see what's happening. So those are the 3 main habits. And honestly, like we call them the anchor habits. you don't really need much else. I mean, you can fill in the specifics with what you eat and whatever,
Right.
but this is the foundational root of everything.
Are there any specific objective measures that you use for people to quantify or help facilitate these things consistently and help create awareness within those specific habits?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So for example, for the 5-minute action, it's like, did you do it or not? Right.
Sure.
So, any kind of consistency tracking is great. For hunger and fullness cues, you can use like a scoring sheet, like a 1 to 10. So
Yeah.
before you eat, how hungry are you? 1 to 10. When you finished eating, how full were you? 1 to 10. With eating slowly, you can time it. And this becomes a real game for many people. There are many meal timing apps or whatever that they like to use. And it starts becoming a game. Like they try and beat their score, which I think is really cute. And they're like, yay, high five, 12 minutes, I did it. So timing a meal for eating slowly is not just a great way to track progress, but also a real wake up call. Because you think you're eating slowly. You're like, oh, this is stupid, this habit. I totally got this.
Yeah.
And then you time it and you're like, oh my God, I just ate that in 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And you realize that you did it while watching television, surfing Facebook, whatever. So there's lots of ways you can track it, but the timer for eating slowly is one of the most brutally honest and amazing methods for sure.
I feel like that's one I would fail at
All
every
of
single
us.
time.
All of us would, yeah.
And so what are some of the common responses that you get back from people as they're implementing these? What do people realize? What do they experience with these?
Yeah, great question. Well, in the beginning, what often happens, people are like, this is stupid. Eating slowly? What kind of crap is that? Like, this is just dumb.
Like, especially you're not telling me what to eat. Like, I want to know what to eat, or what should I not eat?
Give me the meal plan, man.
Right?
Yeah, I didn't come here for behavior change. Just and I'm always like, okay, just try it. Like, try it for a few days and just come back to me and tell me if it's crap. So that's often the initial feedback, although some people are willing to try it. And generally what happens is people are shocked at not just how quickly they're eating, but how mindlessly. Or they'll be like, I cannot sit with my own thoughts at a table for 10 seconds. Like, I want to freak out just the idea of being in my own head for 10 seconds or paying attention to what's going on around me. I feel panic, I feel anxiety, I feel freaked out. So it really shines the spotlight on like what is happening in your life. Or a lot of parents will say, I never realized that I actually haven't sat down to eat a full meal in like 5 years. I'm picking off my kids' plates as I'm rushing to clear the plates to get them off to soccer. I'm like eating crusts of toast or whatever.
Totally.
So it really is the spotlight on your life. Whatever's happening in your life, it's loneliness, anxiety, distraction, rushing, overwhelm, busyness, resentment, whatever it is. And so generally what people say is, I'm surprised, I'm shocked, I can't believe it. And it's really revealed to me what is out of order in my life. And they wouldn't necessarily say it like that, but that's generally the zeitgeist.
I think those of us in the industry who have worked with enough clients, I think there comes a point when we pretty quickly realize that there's a lot of things that underlie someone's, quote unquote goals when they come to us. Say, I want to lose weight, I want to get healthier, I want to get fit, I want to get toned, whatever it is. I think pretty quickly realize that that's not really the goal. The goal is something deeper. I guess my question is, what have been your observations for the main drivers for people to start to, to want to, quote unquote, lose weight, get healthier? What is underlying all of these things that you've experienced?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm so glad you asked that question, because this is something I would want all trainers and coaches to know, which is that almost nobody ever starts a program when they feel great. And I've said this before to trainers, right? Like you're not sitting around going, you know what, I'm doing pretty awesome. I'm like about an A. I wonder if I can get to an A+, right? Like there might be athletes that think that way. There might be a small percentage of clients, but most people don't tip that balance into like, I gotta change until there's some kind of crisis. your partner leaves you, you have a breakup, you have a job loss, something really crappy happens to you, you catch a photo of yourself on a vacation and you're like, dear God, is that me? Like some precipitating crisis has to occur. And often it's like a series of little crises. It's not necessarily like a big thing. It's a series of like small insults to your dignity and self-worth. But ultimately, for most people, it comes from some desire to just be okay, to just be loved, to just be cared for, to just be all right in a world of uncertainty. And that sounds like really metaphysical and woo-woo. But if you sort of boil it down to like universal human questions, ultimately everyone just wants to be okay. They ultimately just want to be loved. And so we do this exercise called the 5 whys, which I'm sure some of your listeners know about. It's like, why do you want to lose weight? Well, I want to lose weight so I can, I don't know, wear pants, wear size 6 pants. Okay, well, why is a size 6 pants important to you? Well, because I feel more confident. And you just sort of drill down the whys. And the 5th why is usually something like, because I feel uncertain about my place in the world. I want to be more confident in my job. I want people to like me. Again, it's these universal human needs. And for people that have struggled with their weight or their body shape or whatever for a long, long time, there's more underneath. There's usually some kind of trauma or difficult life experience, or there's something bigger going on, something more painful and deep. And so, you know, I know some trainers still take the approach of berating people, or like, you got to confront people with their, you know, their stupid behavior. Man, people know they're out of shape. They know they feel like crap. They know that, you know, the choices that they're making. And so generally the need, again, is to be okay, to be loved, to be worthy, to be free of pain, and to not feel uncomfortable emotions. Now, whether that's stress, anxiety, sadness, anger, guilt, whatever it is, it can be a bunch of different things. But that's the reality of what's happening in most people's lives. For men in particular, it tends to be more an injury. So something happens in their life, you know, and they're like, okay, I got to get in shape. And they go to the gym and they get injured. And then they're like, ugh. And that sets them back. So, or, you know, they've always had this vision of themselves as like competent and strong. And maybe that was great when they were 18, but now they're 35 and they go to pick up a box and their back goes sprawling and they're like, how did I get here? So, you know, there's lots and lots of different reasons, but underneath it is a human issue. And as a trainer or a coach, you would be wise to read philosophy to understand these questions that people have grappled with, you know?
So I thank you for that, because, you know, I think that's spot on. And so to follow that up is, have you observed that as people go down that journey, do they experience that emotional freedom that they're looking for when they get to said goal? Or is it more about kind of the process of obtaining that goal that sets them free? Or is it something completely different that doesn't even really have to do with weight loss or nutrition or something like that?
Well, a lot depends on how they got to that goal, right? So let's say you are someone who seeks self-esteem and you think that if I get to 15% body fat, if I'm female, if I get to that mythical 15% body fat or whatever, then I'll be okay. And you're like, okay, that's it. I'm going to, you know, hit a fitness competition. I'm going to hire a trainer. I'm going to go hard at this. I'm going to surround myself with rules and whatever. Then you're going to get to 15% body fat and hate life. Like you're going to be worse off than you were before. And I actually find there's like a tipping point. It's like for most people, a certain level of fitness, you get better and better and better and happier and happier and happier.
Yes.
And then you crest the roller coaster hill and it's like, totally. So, and that point's different for everyone, right? But it's not a linear relationship. It is more like a parabola. And so first of all, the method by which you get there is really important. And ideally, we want to get there through an intrinsic process, a process that is, you know, self-affirming and validating and addresses whatever underlying issues we had that brought us there and enables us to feel empowered to find our own strength and to be able to tolerate discomfort. That's what ends up feeling good. So let's say let's imagine another scenario where the same woman tackles, I don't know, like a big hiking challenge, and she's with a group of other people who are all pitching in, and there's lots of social support. And maybe she gets to that 15% body fat because she's hiking and supporting her hiking through good nutrition. But at the end of it, she feels terrific. And the 15% body fat is almost irrelevant in the face of the self-empowerment, the learning of the skills, the social support, the expanding new horizons, whatever it was. So I think people delude themselves to think that when I get to this goal, I will be happy. It's like, it's gotta go the other way. And my best friend recently had a very scary medical diagnosis. She's an active woman. She's a fighter, and she, has knowledge of good nutrition. But, over the years, things happen. And so her doctor said, hey, listen, here's your medical diagnosis. You better sort your stuff out. And she was like, whoa. And so she was like, okay, this is it. I gotta not be like this. And so 6 months later, she looks terrific. And everyone was like, what happened? How did you do it? And she said, I finally loved myself. And that's just like, whoa, because she had all the knowledge, she had all the skills, she had a supportive community, but that was the missing piece. She wasn't prepared to care for herself. And after the diagnosis, she was like, I got to do this. So a lot of it is about what is happening inside. And a lot of the time, loving yourself or caring for yourself, or at least being neutral to yourself, not being an asshole to yourself, has to come first. It's like the whole 5-minute action. Action has to come before motivation. Yeah. That's the secret.
Are there any tools that you guys utilize to help people implement that, to help people realize the level of self-love that they're giving or not giving themselves?
Yeah, totally. And so the Precision Nutrition program, as well as the offshoot, which we license out to any certified professionals, is based on the schools of psychology that are most able to elicit that in people. So the idea is to kind of give people the progressive program of self-awareness and self-insight, but always with a real mind to like, okay, here's some stuff you may want to notice in yourself. And we're not ripping the Band-Aid off. Like, it's very tiny little, like, hey, today maybe just think about this. Just notice that. That's all we're saying. And like, so there's little tiny progressive little pokes, like poke, 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 poke. But, so for example, using cognitive behavioral therapy, using motivational interviewing, using solution-focused therapy, even a little bit of emotion-focused therapy, to bring people's awareness to things gently, at the correct developmental level, and then say, here's some stuff you want to notice. Here's where you can go with that. So if you're noticing this, here's a pathway to digest that. Because I think you don't want to like rip up, the rug and say, here's all the bugs underneath. Yeah. Good luck. Yes. Here's all your crap. Good luck. Have a nice life. So, part of the program is really also about skill building and saying, okay, so for example, maybe you feel uncomfortable and you're managing that through eating right now. Here's some more skills to practice to deal with discomfort itself. Why don't you try that? So it's about bringing awareness, it's about giving tools, and it's about using those particular disciplines of psychology that are the most effective in helping people do that. And I personally love solution-focused therapy, because that is all about like, get in there, identify the problem, and then immediately start thinking about what you can do. Immediately start putting yourself in the driver's seat. Here's a skill. Go use it. Awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting that how much you guys use these skills to build someone's competence with respect to, their nutrition habits. And I'm curious how you have coaches qualify their clients to kind of determine how coachable they are, or the coaches, how coachable they themselves are. Because as you talk into this, I can see, and I've certainly experienced a lot of people saying, just give me the meal plan, just give me the workout plan. And a lot of resistance to digging in and potentially identifying some of those deep-seated issues. And so how do we, how do we work with clients, or how do you help people understand, or help you quantify the level of coachability that they're willing to take on at one given time?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things we do is straight up ask people. We give them a 1 to 10 and say, right now, how ready are you to change? How willing are you to change? And how able are you to change? Scale of 1 to 10, there's no wrong answers. You tell me where you're at. And if you give me a pretty low score, I have more questions for you. Right? Do you need to be here? Do you want to be here? What would, if you're a 7 out of 10, what would bring you to a 7.5? How come you're not a 6.5? Are you more ready than you were a month ago? Is that useful for me to know? The other thing we stress is this is your journey. Like I always tell clients, like this is your path. This is your game. You play the game any way you want. So if there's something in this program that doesn't work for you, screw it, throw it out. If you don't want to do measurements, I don't care. This is your path. And I think for a lot of people, this is the first time that someone has had a grown-up conversation with them that treats them as adults and says, you are an autonomous, smart human being that can make choices on your own behalf. Now, I'm here to help you make better choices. I'm here to help you facilitate it. I'm here to talk it through, to guide you, give you some options. Hey, I would go this way if you want. But I think most of the exercise nutrition stuff has been very much framed as like, you do this and you're a bad person if you don't do it. Like even the language of compliance is like, who is compliant? Little kids and people in jail, right? Like prisoners are compliant. So who wants that? And so, we talk to clients about like, what are your priorities right now? How can we keep this real? Like maybe you want to get super jacked and swole, but you work full time. You have 2 kids, you have a commute. Is that realistic for you? And if it is, what are you prepared to trade? Let's have an adult conversation about what's most important, what your priorities are, what you want to do, and what you're willing to say yes and no to. And I think clients really appreciate that because they're like, first of all, I never really thought about that, like that to get to that, proverbial 15% body fat that I would have to trade something off.
Totally.
A lot of times they thought it was easier than it was going to be, right? Like a lot of them are a little bit surprised. They're like, I thought I could just maybe stop drinking pop or whatever. And that would do it, right? But I think saying you are the boss. So what are you willing to trade and how ready, willing, able are you? Again, using that scale of 1 to 10 is very, very helpful. And we do that right up front. And we train our coaches to be very zen about things, you cannot want the goal more than the client does, right? We talk about care units. How much do you care and how much does the client care? If they only care a 7 out of 10, actually that's pretty high. If they only care a 5 out of 10 because they have all the other stuff in their life, you cannot care a 10 out of 10. You have to care a 4.
Right.
And if they care a 10 out of 10, awesome. You can show up with your 9 out of 10 caring, but you cannot care more than they do. And you have to be prepared to relinquish that attachment to them reaching their goals and allow them to be the boss, which paradoxically will stimulate them much more to change. Especially the ones that show up and they're like, I'm a stubborn badass. And you're like, great, be the boss. And they're like, okay. It just takes the wind out of their sails, right? Because there's no resistance if you give them nothing to resist. What are they going to do? It's like bullfighting. You just pull the cape away and there's nothing there.
So what do you typically see as far as the journey? Okay, you've worked with 50,000 clients, and I know you have. It's a year-long program, isn't it? Or is it year-long program? So what does that journey typically look like? What are you seeing from an objective standpoint at the end in terms of are people hitting their goals, and what's the ride been like for them? What are the things that you're constantly hearing?
Well, in the beginning, obviously, there's lots of enthusiasm and some fear, a lot of fear, which is interesting because we try not to be scary. So where's the fear coming from, right? So a lot of people have fear because there's something in them that I think knows that change is going to require something that they may not want to deliver. There's lots of excitement. There's lots of enthusiasm. And in the beginning, people, I think, are surprised and delighted or challenged by the fact that it's simple but not easy. So as soon as they run through, 5-minute action, eat slowly, eat 80% full, they're like, oh, like I feel like I don't need a lot of complicated stuff. But this
Mhm.
simple stuff is harder than I thought in a good way. So that's sort of the early stuff. They generally start to see immediate benefits from simply being more aware. Like they start to notice, like, oh, I notice I'm doing this. We teach awareness right off the bat. So they start to see benefits from awareness. Then we start to teach what to eat. And people are like, again, and I try to teach the stuff that makes people feel better right away. So we add protein, we add colorful fruits and vegetables, we add smart carbs, and people get feeling better and they get really excited. And they're like, okay, this is great. I'm starting to feel better. I'm starting to plan my meals. I start to see, immediate effects. But then we hit the grind. So that's about 3 months in, and the bloom is off the rose, and people are like, oh, wait a minute. I got to keep doing this like
Consistency.
forever. That's
Right.
so there's a little bit of a trough around that point, and we call it out. We say, look, this is what you're going to experience. It's normal. It's okay. Use this as an opportunity to keep grooving and keep grooving and keep grooving. So think of it more as like a practice period. Then around 6 months, motivation falls off. Life happens, people travel, whatever. And so there's like, we give them a little bit of a break and say, okay, let's reboot and recommit. Maybe your motivation's changed. Maybe you suddenly don't care about weight loss anymore. Maybe you realize you just want to have adventure in life or whatever. So around 6 months is when things start to crack open. People are like, oh, I thought it was about this, but I realize it's about that. And often they get actually more excited. They're like, this is so great. Now I can unload all this other crap and start pursuing this goal that really makes me interested and happy. And in the second 6 months of the program is where we do a lot of the inner game work, a lot of the mindset stuff. And we start to get into lifestyle stuff like sleep, de-stressing, communication, relationships, asking for what you need, organizing your life. And then we get into looking forward. Where do you want to go with all of this? Because this is not the end, right? Being a good eater is not a goal. It's so that you can get somewhere else. And so we start encouraging people, hey, listen, where do you want to go? Do you want to take a cool trip? Do you want to have an interesting life? Do you want to give back? Do you want to improve your relationships? And so the end of the program is looking towards the future and getting people excited. Like, now that you've built this capacity, where can you go with it? What's possible? And what's been fascinating is a lot of people have discovered that, first of all, maybe they didn't get any physical results, but they feel amazing psychologically, or just in terms of their energy level. They don't care. They're like, I didn't lose a single pound, but I don't care. I feel awesome. Or I suddenly now feel a commitment to helping other people. We've had more coaches come out of our client program than I think anywhere else, because they discover how much better they feel. They're like, this is amazing. I want to help other people do this. I want to learn more. So that happens a lot, which is really cool. So generally most people emerge with a new sense of possibility and a new sense of themselves and a new story for themselves, which is great to see. Now, there's always that small percentage of people that like white knuckle the whole thing and they rigidly control it to the end of the year, and then they kind of crash and burn. And they're like, okay, maybe that wasn't the best path. But generally, if people get to the end, they have a sense of a hopeful future and a greater sense of their own self-efficacy, that they could do more than they expected of themselves a year ago.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And so where does the power of community lie within the hierarchy of steps that you guys take? How important have you determined it to be with, for your client's success?
I think it's huge. I think that the more your environment is organized around the person that you want to become or the life that you want to live, the better. Whether that's your physical environment, your social environment, any environmental component, the more pieces you have that support your journey, the better. And I think people don't realize how strong that is. I think maybe it's a North American thing to rely on willpower and individual will and like soldier ahead no matter what. But I would argue that the environmental component, again, whether that's physical or social or whatever, is probably like 95% of it. More like it's vastly, vastly significant. And until people start reorganizing it, they don't realize. So, and community is huge. I mean, it's like, that's why CrossFit is so successful, right? You go, you have a bunch of people who support you. You have an identity now, like you're part of a team. So I think human beings tend to underestimate, at least in North America, again, how important the collective is. And it can be any collective. It doesn't matter if it's your family, your friends, your workout buddies, whoever that is. But the collective is huge. And if I ever have a client who's like, I'm not telling my family that I'm doing this, I'm like, you may want to rethink that.
I mean, I think it's so well established, and I feel bad that I didn't grasp this earlier in my career. And so it's like, we know this through religion. We know this through CrossFit. We know this through our research with the Blue Zones and all of these communities around the world that are the longest living people in the world. And a major component of their lifestyle is their community. And so I think, is there anything that you recommend to people that are going through this journey that may not be going through it with Precision Nutrition, or to coaches that are running their own coaching programs to help facilitate some aspect of community?
Yeah, I think the first one would just be acknowledging that that's a thing. So reconceptualize your whole set of processes around like all of your client activities. How is your space organized? How do you set up classes? How do you interact with clients? How are the sessions organized? Like, what space does someone have to walk through? Like, just think about every single aspect of your practice and ask yourself, is this conducive to social support? Does it promote social support? So a super simple example of that is Bring a Friend Day. Boxing class I used to go to had Bring a Friend Day. And this was terrific. People brought friends, family, kids, dogs, like everyone. Have a dog in the gym sometimes. Like sometimes that depends if people are scared of dogs or not. But having a dog at the gym, automatic ratcheting up of people's perception of friendliness, right? So like Bring a Friend Day, having a family orientation. I don't mean like kid appropriate, but in the sense of like, okay, you have a client. They probably have friends and family. They're probably in a constellation of people. So how can you reach out to those people? I don't mean bringing them in as gym members necessarily, but let's say, for example, how can you support a family who might have a client that needs to change their diet? Let's say someone's just been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Can you have a handout for other family members? Here's how to prepare type 2 diabetes friendly meals, right? Like, how can you support other people in it? But also, how are you creating a welcoming space? And this is a classic problem for many MMA gyms, I find. Now, I'll walk in there and be one of the only women and be like, whatever. But I'll tell you, if I walk in and they're friendly and they're welcoming and the bathrooms are clean and there's another woman in the class, I'm a million times more likely to hang out at that place. So assess the overall vibe. If someone comes in your front door, are they going to want to stay? Are they going to want to connect with the other people? Simple stuff. When you run a group class, make sure everyone knows each other. If there's a new person, hey, Jane is new today. Everyone say hi to Jane. Everyone high five Jane. Pair Jane with someone else. Like, it's little things like that make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's gold. I mean, we do have a lot of trainers that listen, and there's a lot of pipelines that trainers go through depending on who they're learning from and the certifications that they get that can be very rigid and militant and give us this perception that we need to be drill instructors as a trainer and be always counting tempo. And I'm not saying that's not right for certain people, but first and foremost, I mean, do we want someone to continue coming? Do we want them to be physically active? Does it matter, like if they're exercising, if they're having a good time, if they're in a community, if they're, enjoying themselves? I mean, isn't that really the most important thing, especially from an exercise standpoint, when we know the lifestyle and nutrition are going to be the main drivers, especially if weight loss is a goal or whatever. So I'm really appreciative that you shared that. And for those that aren't trainers, but are part of a community or, exercising, then you should feel like you are part of a community, and enjoying, your time that you set aside to exercise. So, yeah, that's really, really good stuff. Krista, maybe you could quickly tell us about your book, Why Me Want to Eat.
Yeah, well, okay, am I allowed to swear here? Because I'm
Yeah,
gonna
please
say,
bring it
okay,
on.
okay, good. I always have to ask. Yeah, so the latest book is called Why Me Want to Eat: Fixing Your Food Fucked Upitude, and it is like a little workbook that takes all of the counseling psychology approaches to treating disordered eating and puts it in a fun format that is like very accessible, very plain language, and full of little exercises that you can do. So the book is like, people have asked, well, can I get it in Kindle? And I'm like, no, it's print, because it's a book that you want to scribble on. And in a couple places, I'm like, rip out this page and crumple it up, like, so that you can physically interact with it. And it's similar to a habit-based approach, in the sense it's little nuggets of like, here's how to think about this, and then here's what to do about it, and to slowly process, whatever fucked upitude you have, because almost all of us are messed up in some way or another. And I don't mean to say that we're all inherently dysfunctional. It's just, we're actually incredibly resilient and functional. It's more like to say, listen, you're not alone. Whatever you're dealing with, 2018 is a weird time to be alive. So if you're feeling a little bit unsettled, it's totally normal. Here's how to digest it a little bit, so to speak. So that was the intent of that book. And because I was finding that clinical literature in disordered eating was inaccessible and also spoke to a very limited population. Like, most of us are not clinical grade disordered eaters, or, we don't have a clinical disorder. We're just a little messed up. We're like on the continuum. So clinical literature was very dry, didn't speak to, most people. And then a lot of the sort of self-help books around disordered eating were very, I don't know, kind of huggy, touchy-feely, like, find your journey kind of stuff. And that's not wrong. Like, it definitely connects to some people. But for me, the flavor of this was just like, man, this shit's fucked up. Like, when you're in it, you're just like, why am I so crazy? Like, you have the way you talk to yourself about it in your head is real. And it's very gritty and graphic. And so I tried to encapsulate a little bit of that mental script and how it would feel, and the kind of language that you'd use to talk to yourself, which is, for many people, asking themselves, why is my shit so fucked up? and then to say, here's how to unfuck it. And here's a sense of possibilities in a very clear step-by-step process that you can follow. So it seems to be a hit with people. And of course, there's lots of humor, obviously, because you kind of have to laugh at your problems.
I like, I haven't read it, but I will definitely look forward to reading it, especially because the more people I work with, the more I realize how fucked up we are.
Yes.
But I like that you're accepting, allowing people to accept the fact that they're fucked up, and it's totally okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, let's accept it. And it's not your fault. I'm assuming it's not your fault.
Not your fault.
And so here, let's work through it to help you understand why you're feeling this way and what can be done about it. So that's definitely something that I'm going to check out. And for all you listening, we'll make sure to have a link in the show notes so that you can find out why you're fucked up.
And to understand that you can, like, it's only like, if we draw the pie chart of your life, right, it doesn't determine you. Because I think a lot of us feel like, oh, I'm fucked up, and therefore I'm a dysfunctional human being. It's like, no. You're probably like a 99.9% very resilient, very strong, enduring human being. It's just that this is like, something that's not as workable as it could be. But it doesn't mean that you are the problem. The problem is the problem. But, one of the prevailing messages of the book is like, you're actually way more resilient and strong and cool and thoughtful and wise than you realize. All you need are some skills to kind of tap into that a little bit.
And we'll wrap it up in a sec, but I imagine it's a pretty useful resource for coaches and trainers, because in my experience, sometimes we're the most fucked up.
100%. 100% agree completely.
And there's always a period of time where we're kind of hiding behind our own, like, just kind of genetic gifts and maybe we're just naturally in great shape, or we just love to train and we just happen to eat great, but we're still, have our eating issues and our food issues and our body image issues. And so I think until we can understand and overcome those, we probably aren't in a position to really be able to help other people deal with their own stuff, if that sounds fair.
Yes, I think you've made such an important point there for a couple of reasons. One is that, yes, if you work with clients, they will activate your stuff. They don't mean to, but they will activate your stuff at some point. So you better handle that, unless you want to walk around even more wigged out than you were before, right? The other piece is that by working through our own issues and having compassion for ourselves, we're then able to extend that compassion to our clients. Because coaches are not special people. As you say, some of us used to be athletes or we had genetic gifts, but aging really levels the playing field for the most part. So whatever genetic gifts you have at 18, forget about them when you're 45. Like, they're not going to be helping you as much as they used to. So, we need to develop the skills of compassion for ourselves if we want to have them for our clients. And when I talk about compassion, a lot of hard-ass coaches are like, well, that's just crap. People need to be taught that whatever. And I'm like, you know what? Research shows that doesn't work. Like, it just doesn't work. And maybe it works for that 1% of clients that loves the hard-ass approach and wants to hurt. But by and large, compassion and care and gentleness and kindness, even if your program is very structured or, challenging, that has to be there. And if you cannot find that in yourself, for yourself, you're not going to be able to give it to clients. And, as you say, so many coaches are walking around with this secret inside themselves that they feel like they cannot achieve whatever it is they want to achieve. And so they feel like frauds, and they feel anxious, and they excoriate themselves in all kinds of ways. That's also energy that could be going to your clients, right? Like, imagine if you could get rid of your neuroses and anxiety and self-flagellation, all that kind of stuff, how much more relaxed and happy you would be in working with your clients. Like, wouldn't that be nice? I don't have to sit here wondering if my client thinks that I'm out of shape. I'm cool. Totally. I can focus on my client.
And that's, truthfully, that's a lot of the stuff that I started to realize about myself with going through the habit coaching program. I was one of the first, I think I was in the first certification program that Precision Nutrition had for coaches. This was probably 2006 or 2007, if that sounds right. And so it's been a long, interesting road, but certainly uncovering our own demons has been absolutely instrumental in developing the empathy necessary and compassion necessary to help understand what other people are going through. And so I'm glad you brought that up again. I'm really looking forward to diving into your book. And with that, I'm going to let you roll. But Krista, thank you so much for your time and energy on the show. It's really been enlightening.
Oh, thanks. My pleasure. It was great to be here.
Oh, and before I let you go, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, well, you can always find me on Facebook. That is because, I'm an old person, in my mid-40s. Facebook is my medium of choice. So if you just find me on Facebook, that's one of the easiest ways. I'm also on Twitter, rarely, and Instagram as @Stumptuous. And of course, stumptuous.com is my poorly tended website that it's been around for 20 years, but I've been letting it kind of float off into the ether a little bit. But, you can find me there too. You can find Stumptuous on Facebook. So, and then of course, precisionnutrition.com, if you're a coach, trainer, whatever, there's so much free stuff on it. I highly encourage people to just go and read all 500 of our free articles on there and just enjoy.
Tons of incredible, free, very useful, very well put together pieces of content. So make sure you guys go and check it out. And with that, Krista, thank you again very much. It's really been a pleasure, and we'll have to do it again soon.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode with Krista Scott-Dixon. What an enlightening conversation that was as to the power of our mindset, as to the power of our behaviors, and how so much of our success resides not in the foods we do or don't put in our mouth, but really in our day-to-day actions and behaviors, and the power of just being consistent. And so I hope you found the same value that I did. I hope that you found some actionable steps that you can start to implement. And make sure to check out the show notes over at bslnutrition.com/episode 38. And if you haven't already and you're new to the show, well, I hope you enjoyed it, and make sure to subscribe and leave a review in iTunes so that ultimately we can help more people make smart nutrition simple. And if you have any questions or have a specific topic that you'd love for me to cover on the show, then just do me a favor and shoot me an email. You can reach me at ben@bslnutrition.com. I'd love to hear from you. The only way that I can keep making this show better is by getting your feedback. So please, please leave a review, shoot me an email, let me know what you'd like to see or hear on the show, if there's any guests that you'd love to hear, and any insight you have would be so much greatly appreciated. With that said, I appreciate you. You have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next week.